Hello and welcome back to another chapter of Chaser. I know it's been a while, and, well, I only just recently fixed my software. Now I can actually record again. So, yeah. So onwards to Chapter 6, Visiting Hours. The door to the waiting area opened, and a nurse came in with a clipboard. "Mr. Chaser?" She looked around the room for a moment, trying to find me. I stood up and walked over. "That's me." She smiled. "The doctor says she'll be just fine. You can see her now if you'd like." She held the door for me, and I walked through to the patient ward. Yes, I would, thanks." "You're very welcome." She walked me down the hallway towards Fluttershy's room. "What you did today was very brave. Fluttershy is a well-loved member of this community. I'm sure there'll be a lot of ponies that want to thank you." Yeah. The doctor had said the same thing when he had got to the hut last night. So had the paramedics that had taken us to the hospital. I'd heard it about 5 times now, and it was getting a little annoying. We stopped in front of a room about 2/3 of the way down the hall. Fluttershy's name was on the board next to the door. "Here she is." The room was lit brightly, with a large window facing out of the rear of the building. The window was open slightly, and the cool night air drifted in, diffusing the sterile smell of the hospital with the subtle hints of lilies from the gardens below. Fluttershy lay on her good side, looking out the window at the clear night sky. Her bandages had been replaced, and her coat had been cleaned of blood. She looked much better now. I quietly knocked on the door as I came in, and she turned her head to see who it was. When she saw me, she smiled and sat up, turning towards me. "Oh," she exclaimed softly. "Hi, Chaser." "Hi." I tried to smile as I walked over towards her. "How are you feeling?" "Better. The doctor said I might even be able to go home tomorrow. Thanks to you and Zecora, that is." She pointed to her wing. It had been tightly wrapped bound to her side, to prevent her from accidentally flapping it and causing any more strain. "But I'm not supposed to try flying for at least a week," she sighed. "Well, I'm just glad you're all right." I shuffled my hooves awkwardly, not really knowing what to do next. "I will be." She lay back gingerly and looked out the window. "I'm worried about all my little animals, though." "I'm sure they'll be okay." I took another few steps, coming to the foot of the bed. "They seemed just fine this morning." "Oh, but that was so long ago. They haven't been fed or brushed, and they're probably all scared and upset." She looked really distressed at the thought. I was the reason she'd gone into the woods, so I was the one who had put her in here. Helping out was the least I could do. Hey, why don't I go check on them?" I said quickly. "I can get them some food at least, and make sure they're all okay." "You'd do that?" Yeah, sure. I just wish I could offer to do more. It couldn't be all that difficult, could it? I figured I could manage it well enough for one night. They were just animals. How hard could it be?" Fluttershy slid down to the foot of the bed to give me a hug. "Oh, Chaser, you don't know how much that means to me. Thank you so much." The hug caught me completely off guard. At first, I just stood there, feeling her against me. I figured that might come across as awkward, so I tried to return the hug. I wasn't terribly experienced at this sort of thing, and I'm glad no one was there to watch me fumble about, but I think I managed all right. At any rate, after moments, she scooted back up to the bed and lay down again, smiling. After a moment of silence, I shook my head to clear my thoughts and smiled. "Okay then." I could feel my cheeks glowing as I headed for the door. "I should probably head over there now, before it gets any later." "Oh yes," Fluttershy nodded. "They have food in the back you can give them." Then, as an afterthought, she added, "Oh, and make sure to let them know I'll be home soon, so they don't worry, if it's not too terribly inconvenient." Yeah, no problem. I will." I headed out the door, feeling a bit foggy. I hoped this wouldn't take too long. I couldn't get the thought of that hug out of my mind as I wandered to Fluttershy's cottage in a daze. It felt really nice. warm and comforting. She had smelled like wildflowers and warm summer breezes. "Stop," I chided myself. "You're being silly. She was just thanking you for offering to help, remember? Don't read into it." I would have continued berating myself had I not heard a voice from across the street. "Mommy, why is that stallion talking to himself?" "Don't pay him any mind, dear." I turned to see ponies across the street, seated at a table in front of a shop, who were staring at me with mixed expressions. I waved at them and laughed, and it sounded about as awkward as I felt. I hurried along mumbling, "Great, now the ponies here think you're crazy to boot." I finally came over the hill and saw her cottage in the distance. It looked lonely in the dark, without any lights in sight to warm it. I sighed loudly, trying to refocus on my task, and fluttered up over the front gate. Dozens of beady eyes appeared over the span of her yard as I landed, some from bushes, others from trees. Half-awake critters watched as I marched toward the cottage. The bear I'd seen earlier lay against a large oak, snoozing peacefully. Several bunnies were huddled in a pile by a large rhododendron bush. Birds were blinking at me from the trees. I stepped up to the front door and cleared my throat. Hey, little animals. My name is Chaser. I was here earlier today." I felt like I was introducing myself to a classroom. "I'm here to get you something to eat. I just have to go around to the back of the house real quick, so wait here, okay?" When no one moved, I took my leave, trotting away quickly around the cottage. I scanned the border of the house, checking for any sort of storage containers as I went. As I rounded the back, I saw them. Several large barrels stacked up against the back wall of the cottage, next to a tiny black door. As soon as I got to them, I threw the lid off the nearest barrel and gazed inside. In the bright moonlight, I spied large pellets of animal food and a scoop for pulling them out. Looking around, I found several large, empty food bowls near the barrels. I filled them as quickly as I could, and besides spilling a couple of pellets behind the barrel, it was fairly easy. Once they were all filled, I grabbed them one by one and placed them out in the backyard, making sure to space them out reasonably so the animals wouldn't bump into each other while they ate. Then I went back around to the front of the house, where the animals were finally milling about, and stood by the front door again. "Hi again, critters," I shouted nervously. "I bet you're all really hungry by now. Fluttershy asked me to come and get you all some food, so I put it out back for you. Fluttershy asked me to do it because she can't come home tonight. She said to let you all know she'll be back as soon as she can, though, and not to worry." I hoped they understood. The big bear yawned and stretched, and the birds began flitting out of the trees and flying around back. Bunnies and mice started scampering around me, and soon the yard was empty, save for myself. I could hear crunching sounds in the back. Whew! I wiped my brow. This had been so much easier than I had thought it would be. Now, to head back and... I almost tripped over a bunny that was staring up at me. "Oh, hi there, little guy." I leaned over. "Don't you want some food, too?" The little white bunny regarded me for a moment, then reached out its tiny paw and slapped me across the face. "Ow!" I bumped the door while trying to back up, my cheek burning. I looked down at the bunny, incredulous. "What the hay was that for?" It produced a picture from behind its back, pointing at it angrily. I looked closer. "Fluttershy?" It nodded. "You want to know where Fluttershy is?" It nodded more vigorously. "She isn't here. She isn't coming home tonight. She's..." I hesitated. "In the hospital." The bunny's ears went straight up when it heard the word hospital, and for a moment I thought it might hit me again. I cringed in expectation, but instead it turned and started hopping towards the town. It easily cleared the tiny fence and took off down the path. "Hey, wait a minute! You can't do that! Fluttershy didn't say you could leave!" I dashed off after it. "Stop! You're gonna get us both in trouble!" Of all the things, it had been going so well, too. Couldn't one thing just go right today? I chased that sadistic rabbit all the way back to the hospital, yelling at it most of the way. Thank Luna, most of the town was inside for the night, and I was only seen by 2 or 3 ponies during the chase. I couldn't believe it could run so fast on those stubby little legs. I was exhausted by the time I finally caught him. He squirmed and cried as I lifted him up. "Gotcha, you little face slapper!" I was too out of breath to think of anything else to say. I looked up and saw the hospital standing in front of me. Had we really run all that way? I looked back down the path, thinking about how far I'd run after him. I'd have to travel all the way back again to get the little guy home. I decided it just wasn't worth it. I looked down at him and sighed. "Fine. You win. I'm not taking you back. I'm way too tired. Come on." I set him down carefully and looked up at me, disgruntled, as he smoothed out his fur before following. "But you better behave in there. There are sick ponies who don't need a rampaging rabbit in their rooms." I walked back to the patient ward after waving at the front desk, and found my way to Fluttershy's room, the obnoxious bunny in tow. Her door was partly shut, so I slowly pushed it open and whispered, "Fluttershy? You awake?" "Yes," came the soft reply. I almost fell over as the bunny dived under me between my legs and rushed into the room. "Whoa! Hey, get back here, you little—" It jumped up on the bed and hopped into Fluttershy's forelegs. "Angel Bunny! I missed you so much today, sweetie." I walked in to find the bunny snuggling Fluttershy for dear life, while she ran a hoof down its back gently. "Yeah, he, really wanted to come and see you." "Oh, thank you, Chaser. I'm so glad you could bring him here." Angel Bunny glared at me as I smiled and replied, Sure, no trouble at all." I leaned in to pat him on the head, and he growled at me. "Maybe later." Just then, a voice issued from the hallway. "Hey guys, I found her!" It was followed by several more. "Fluttershy! There you are! Fluttershy, darling! Yay! Well, ain't you a sight for sore eyes?" Voices from the hall quickly became ponies in the room. I recognized Rarity and Pinkie Pie. Pinkie Pie was carrying a stack of what looked like get-well-soon cards, and a huge bunch of balloons had been tied to her tail, to the point that she almost floated into the room. With them there were a rainbow-maned Pegasus, a purple unicorn, and an orange earth pony in a cow pony hat. I was practically shoved away from the bed by the Pegasus as she zoomed over to stand next to Fluttershy, ignoring me entirely. "You have no idea how worried I had all these scaredy ponies," she said as she waved a hoof towards the other four mares. "Not me, though. I knew you'd be fine," she said with an air of confidence. "Which is why you volunteered to head up the Pegasus search team, right?" retorted the cow pony. "You were just yelling at every pony to hurry so Fluttershy didn't get bored waiting for us, huh?" she laughed. I was pushed to the other end of the room as the others took positions around the bed and began speaking over each other in their excitement, celebrating the safe return of their friend. The room was suddenly much too loud and too small. I tried to make it out the door and excuse myself without being noticed, when my back hoof hit a large cable, and I tripped onto a small table I hadn't noticed before. The table yelped. I followed suit, leaping up into the air and looking down to see what had just happened. I discovered, to my shock, that I hadn't tripped over a cable at all. I had tripped over a tail. A dragon tail. "Dragon!" I dived towards the creature without a thought, my hooves outstretched to catch it as I swooped low. The thing couldn't have been more than 10 or 15 years old, a baby by dragon standards, and it might just be confused, though how it had gotten this far into the building without any mayhem. There was no time to think about that. I needed to get it out of the building before it tried to eat or steal something, or some pony, and cause major damage, not to mention panic. I caught it between my hooves, and my momentum carried us both out the door and into the hall. "Hey, whatcha—" the dragon began to protest, which caught me by surprise. Dragons don't normally learn to talk so young. He stopped abruptly when, due to my momentary distraction, we both collided with the wall opposite the doorway. A resounding thud echoed down the hall, causing several heads to come peeking out of doors and around corners to investigate. Before I could recover and get the dazed baby dragon outside to safety, I was smacked in the chin by a blue hoof. I stumbled backwards, my world spinning about as I recoiled from the force of the blow. I tasted the smallest hint of blood in my mouth. I fell to the floor, and then felt hooves begin pulling me up. Hey, what? Let go! There's a dragon! We know, Sugar Cube, a twangy voice responded from my left. Yeah, what we don't know, a voice on my right continued harshly, is who the hey you are, and what you're doing in Fluttershy's room. I turned to see Cowpony and Rainbow Man holding me by my forelegs. They both held me firmly, but the Pegasus was gripping me so hard it hurt. I was trying to sort out what would cause a response like this when the purple unicorn rushed past us over to the dragon and began to help it up. Spike, are you okay? She asked it. It groaned, holding its head and spinning about. Rarity ran out past the three of us in the doorway, coming to the creature's other side. Oh, little Spiky Wikey, are you all right, dearie? She whipped her head around to me, a look on her face somewhere near, but not quite reaching, anger. Chaser, what are you thinking? Why would you do such a thing? Yeah, rainbow-colored Pegasus snapped, a look of confusion towards Rarity. Wait a minute. Chaser? Her confusion redirected towards me. This crazy stallion is the pony who found Fluttershy? I'm not crazy. I'm trying to protect you all, I grunted as I struggled against the grips on my legs. These mares were strong. Cowpony finally obliged, releasing my left leg, but Rainbow Man was in no rush to follow suit. She glared at me with a look of intense distrust. Protect us? Cowpony asked me incredulously as she let go. From who? Spike? Yes, I yelled. From Spike. Wait, you know its name? Uh-oh. I was starting to realize I had missed something. Spike is our good friend, Rarity explained, her expression softening. Yeah, I'm a good guy. Dragon leapt forward, still a bit unsteady. Really, I'm not like other dragons. He is also my assistant and scribe, the other unicorn turned to me. She sighed, blowing a loose piece of magenta hair back into her violet mane. I can understand your confusion. Your father was a hunter, after all. But do you really think a wild dragon would be able to walk into a hospital like this and not get noticed? I mean, that is... Wait, how do you know about my father? Rarity and Pinkie Pie. They explained everything to us while we were searching for Fluttershy. Well, and for you... She stepped forward and raised a hoof towards me in greeting. I went to shake her hoof, but was stopped by the death grip on my right leg from the Pegasus, who was still looking at me like I was crazy. Can I have my leg back now? Huh? She looked like she had forgotten she'd been holding me, and the ugly glower disappeared from her eyes. Oh, right. She let go, and I rubbed my leg for a moment to try to get some circulation back into it, then turned to the unicorn, who was still waiting to shake my hoof. I shook Unicorn's hoof uncertainly. Well, you already know who I am, apparently. Can I ask who you all might be? Oh, of course, the unicorn blushed slightly. How rude of me. My name is Twilight Sparkle. It's nice to meet you. She turned to the two ponies who'd been restraining me. This is Applejack and Rainbow Dash. Howdy, Applejack waved quickly. Sorry about the mix-up there. You all right? I rubbed my jaw tenderly, feeling the bruise developing beneath the surface. The Pegasus had gotten me good. I'm okay. I feel pretty silly, though. Well, next time, just ask before tackling some pony. Dragon. Rainbow Dash crossed her forelegs and leaned against the doorframe coolly. Pinkie Pie's voice resounded from Fluttershy's room. Did somebody say silly? She bounced out, grinning as always. Hiya, Chaser! Hey, Pinkie. The hallway was getting more crowded than the hospital room had been. How are you? Hey, not that playing catch-up in the hall isn't cool, Rainbow interjected, but it's really not. It's actually pretty boring. Besides, Fluttershy's in there, she pointed into the room, and I thought we came here for her. Oh, that's okay, Fluttershy's voice peeped up. Take your time.
It's fine.
Every pony but Pinky rolled their eyes.
Nonsense, dear,
said Rarity.
We're coming, Fluttershy,
followed Twilight Sparkle. Her horn glowed magenta, and there was a flash. I shielded my eyes from the sudden light, and when I removed my leg, she had vanished. There was a flash behind me, and I turned around to discover she had teleported into the hospital room, skipping past all of us who were blocking the doorway. Huh, that's a neat trick, I muttered quietly.
Want to see another one?
Pinky asked as she bounced in front of me.
Because I've been practicing this really neat party trick for almost a week, and I think I've got it down now. I just need a sheet of cloth and some eggs or a ball.
What? Maybe later, Pinky.
Okie dokie dokie.
And she bounced back into the room, followed shortly by the other ponies, and Spike. In the moments of absence, others had gained entry into Fluttershy's room. Several birds and a squirrel had managed to get in through the open window, and were sitting near the head of her bed, where Fluttershy was nuzzling them sweetly. Several more perched on the windowsill, and through the window the larger animals were standing out in the garden lawn, looking in. A few more bunnies, ferrets, and the big bear. The animals must have finished eating and followed Angel and I.
Hey, Fluttershy.
Twilight Sparkle leaned in towards her friend, smiling.
You had us all really scared.
Fluttershy looked up.
I'm sorry, every pony. I didn't mean to make you all worry.
Twilight slid a chair over with her telekinesis and sat down next to the bed.
Well, next time something upsets you, come and talk to us about it before making any potentially dangerous decisions. Speaking of danger, Rainbow Dash piped up, what happened in the woods? Looks like you had a pretty crazy day in there.
Yes, Twilight leaned in.
I was going to ask the same thing. Could you fill us all in on what happened to you?
I thought I sensed a hint of academic curiosity buried just below the surface of her concern.
Oh, well,
Fluttershy looked nervous.
It all happened so fast. Chaser, do you think you could help? I mean, if it's all right?
She glanced at me, still standing in the doorway awkwardly, a pleading expression in her eyes. Sure. I stepped into the room, feeling everyone turning towards me. I'm not that great a storyteller, though, so if you get bored and fall asleep, I warned you, okay? No one laughed. I wasn't surprised. I'm not that good at being funny, either. Okay, well... I cleared my throat and tried to remember the events of the day. Pinky opened the window all the way so the animals could hear. Well, Rarity and I split up, you all know that. I ran towards the woods as fast as I could. So they brought us into town, looked me over, and had Fluttershy admitted while Zecora went to find all of you, I guess. A nurse rapped at the door, and we all turned.
Visiting hours are almost up. Better wrap up the bedtime story, hero.
She winked at me and left. I resisted the heavy urge to sigh.
Yeah,
so, that's pretty much the whole story, I think. I turned to Fluttershy. Am I missing anything? I had left the personal bits out and just given them the facts, but I was pretty sure I'd covered it all. She shook her head softly.
Well, I wasn't awake for some of it, but I think you got it all. That was a cooler story than I expected. Way to go have an adventure without us, Fluttershy.
Rainbow Dash looked impressed. I blushed slightly.
Well, I don't know if it was all that impressive.
Twilight Sparkle looked at me intrigued.
Actually, Chaser, it really was. And it sounds like you were the perfect pony for the job. I'm curious, though. You said Zecora mentioned the Timberwolves were out of place that close to town?
I thought back to the poetic shaman's words in the woods. Yeah, I think so. She said they shouldn't have been this far east, I think. I saw a glint in her eye, and she smiled. Spike, come on. We've got research to do. Spike jumped up from the edge of the bed where he'd been sitting. Oh boy, more research, he groaned. Spike? She looked down her nose at him, motherly in her authority. I'm coming. He turned to run up the bed and gave Fluttershy a quick hug. Bye, Fluttershy. Glad you're okay. Thank you, Spike. Fluttershy, Twilight said through the doorway.
Get plenty of rest, all right? I'll try, Twilight. Thank you.
Twilight smiled. You're welcome. Good night, every pony. There was a wave of good nights, and Twilight and Spike were gone. Rainbow Dash stretched and yawned.
I should probably get going, too. Heading up a search party is tiring work, and tomorrow I'm on morning cloud duty.
She dropped down to the bedside and gave a half hug to Fluttershy.
Next time.
I know, Fluttershy grinned sheepishly.
Don't go alone.
Exactly. That's what friends are for, right? Anyway, before I go, I brought you something for while you're waiting for your wing to heal. She pulled something out of a satchel near the floor. It was a book. She handed it to Fluttershy, who immediately got misty-eyed.
Oh, Rainbow Dash, she protested. I couldn't.
Sure you can. It's cool. I've read it like 10 times already. She glanced around at those of us still in the room, a serious look on her face.
Not that I'm an egghead or anything.
Fluttershy took the book, a copy of the first Daring Do novel, one of my favorites, and hugged it to her chest.
Thank you, Rainbow Dash. I'll try and read it quickly.
Well, not too quickly, or you might miss the part on page 57 where... She stopped, laughed nervously, and ran a hoof through her mane. What I mean is, take your time. Fluttershy nodded. Rainbow shot over to me, a smug look on her face. You seem pretty cool, Chaser. Not as cool as me, but pretty close. We should hang sometime, when I'm at my full awesome levels. Wow, what an ego. She was a friend of Fluttershy, though, and I couldn't see her befriending someone who was a jerk. Why not? Sure, okay. Awesome. Well, later. She spat out the door, leaving a brief rainbow trail in her wake.
I've got to go, too. Pinkie skipped towards the door. Now that I have 3 parties planned, I need to get started as soon as possible.
3 parties? I was afraid to ask, but more afraid not know. She giggled and started counting on her hooves.
One to welcome you to Ponyville, and one for you saving Fluttershy, and one for Fluttershy Get Well party. Bye!
And with that, she was gone. How would she manage to balance like that? Rarity and Applejack were the only ones in the room with us now. There was a moment of silence, and then Rarity piped up.
Well, I'm glad this awful thing is over.
That's for sure, Applejack agreed.
So, Chaser dear,
Rarity fluttered her eyes at me and smiled.
Are you still free tomorrow evening?
What's tomorrow evening? Applejack cocked an eyebrow our way. Huh? I had totally forgotten. Had I agreed to something? Rarity had been mentioning something about stallion fashion, I think, just before Fluttershy had screamed from the woods.
Why, Chaser here has graciously agreed to help me design some absolutely cutting-edge haute couture stallion wear tomorrow. I'm simply dying to try my hoof at something other than a dress for a change.
She giggled like a school filly, and did a half twirl, her hair sparkling in the moonlight coming through the window as it bounced.
Oh, Fluttershy said, that sounds lovely, Rarity. Yes, it's going to be so much fun, don't you think? See you tomorrow, Chaser.
She blew me a kiss on the way out the door.
Ta-ta, girls. Feel better, Fluttershy. Oh, and don't rush yourself. I've already called and postponed a spa day until you're back on your hooves. Good night.
Now I remembered. Oh, right. Yeah. Hot culture stallion wear. Had I actually agreed to that? Applejack cleared her throat.
Well, that's all well and good. Have fun with that. I've got to get home, though. I've got to start in on chores extra early to make up for what I didn't finish today.
She cocked a relaxed half-smile Fluttershy's way. Fluttershy, on the other hoof, looked extremely upset.
Oh, Applejack, I'm sorry I got in the way of your chores, she apologized.
Oh, don't you worry none, darling. I was just glad to get away for a few hours, even if it was because we thought you were in mortal danger. You just rest on up. She turned to me and tipped her hat.
Well, sure was nice to meet you. Good night, Chaser.
She headed for the door. Good night. I turned back towards Fluttershy, but then a thought occurred to me, and I turned back to the doorway. Oh, hey, before you go, do either of you know where there's a place I could rent a room for the night? Applejack spun around so fast I thought her hat was going to fly off. What was that? I said I wanted to know if... Oh, I heard you. She trotted over to me as she spoke. And you ain't paying for a room tonight, Sugar Kid. Not after all you done. I took a nervous step back. I'm not? She looked a little angry. She put a hoof on the side table next to the bed and sighed lightly. No, she grinned. You're coming with me tonight. We got spare rooms aplenty up at Sweet Apple Acres. I am? Sure are. It's the least I can do. Oh, no, I couldn't. Yes, you can. It's easy. You just say yes. I shot a glance at Fluttershy. She smiled at me and nodded. I think that's a wonderful idea, Applejack. Well, see? Fluttershy likes the idea. So, you coming? Well, free room and board did seem nice, but I didn't feel like I'd earned anything by my actions. After all, I'd only saved Fluttershy because she'd run away from me in the first place. Why didn't anyone get that? Still, I didn't want to upset her, and she seemed taken with the idea, and her friend seemed sincere. I suppose I could accept a little thanks, even if it wasn't deserved. If it would make my new friends a little happier. I couldn't ever remember being someone who made ponies happier. Yeah, sure, Applejack. I'd like that. Well, that settles it. She turned back around and headed up the door. I'll be waiting outside. After she left, I looked over to see Fluttershy smiling at me, a wreath of tiny animals framing her head. I guess your friends like me. Why wouldn't they? She asked as she sat up. I don't know, I shrugged. I guess I'm just not used to being likable. Fluttershy frowned. I don't think that's true. I mean, it shouldn't be. I sat down on the edge of the bed next to her. It's true. I'm not used to being, I pointed to my cloak. Oh, she responded. Well, I don't think that should have so much to do with whether you're likable. Well, in my experience, it's probably best not to go telling any pony just yet. I sighed as I stood up from the bed. Still, if there was ever a pony I was actually glad knew about it, I couldn't help but smile just a little. I think it would be you, Fluttershy. She blushed. Oh, well, thank you. I might have been blushing a little too, as I headed for the door. You're welcome. Get some rest, okay? The last thing I heard from Fluttershy's room was a chorus of birdsong, singing a lullaby softly.